Nigeria's total merchandise trade for the first quarter of this year decreased by 22.4%. This change attributed to a 30.3% decline in export value over that previous quarter. Joining us now for a look at Nigeria's first quarter foreign trade statistics is Yemi Kale, Statistician General at the National Bureau of Statistics in Abuja. Give us first an indication of what led to this decline.
Yes, the decline in trade in the first quarter of 2012 was largely as a result of a decline in imports on a year-on-year. And that's what pushed down our total trade in 2012 first quarter.
But the good highlight here is the balance of trade year-on-year picked up quite significantly. This is good for several reasons.
Yes, obviously it means that the ability of the central bank to keep our exchange rate stable becomes easier. And like I said, this was largely as a result of a drop in imports on a year-on-year basis. And that's where our balance of trade had improved significantly in the first quarter.
Something that is indicative of a development all across Africa is China is the country where most of Nigeria's imports are now coming from.
Yes, that's correct. We have noticed a pattern where most of our imports are now shifted. In the past, most of our imports were coming from the United States and several countries within the European Union. But consistently, China has now become the major destination of our imports. And I guess that is not too surprising.
That said, the UK and the US are not too far apart from the other main source countries. Does that mean that Nigeria is still exposed to a certain level to the contagion from the global economy and whatever misfortunes there may be there?
Obviously, our major trading partners, whether in imports and exports, have always been the United States, China now, recently, and then a few countries in Western Europe. That is still the case, but what we have noticed on exports in particular is that in the first quarter in 2012, the value of exports actually to these countries actually are reducing. So we're having a more diversified source of for our exports. So you will find that overall our exports are growing, but we're having increases in exports to China, to India, even to other African countries. So it's no longer concentrated between the United States and Western Europe as it used to be in the past.
Talk to us about where Nigeria is exporting to, because one thing that stands out is that in as much as China is the #1 importer, it is nowhere near the top 10 exporters.
Well, yes, you have to understand the nature of our exports. Our exports are largely mineral products, in particular crude exports, and typically the United States and countries Western Europe are usually our major export destinations, particularly, especially for crude oil. So yes, we still export largely to these countries. In particular, I think the first quarter, I think India was our largest trading partner for destination for exports, followed by the United States and Netherlands, and then a few countries in Western Europe. And that I expect would continue as a result of geographical propinquity, as well as historical factors.
How come total trade was still in the positive despite the fact that, one, the subsidy was removed and that led to a bit of protests, but overall that didn't seem to have a big impact?
Well, it did have an impact. If you I mentioned that total trade went up significantly, largely as a result of a drop in imports. So if you look at the numbers, you see that exports stayed more or less, grew very slightly, but because there was a significant drop in imports, particularly of processed fuels under the mineral product section, so it's not that our exports grew significantly, it's just that our imports of mainly processed fuels came down significantly year on year, and that's actually why our total trade remained very positive and our balance of trade remained positive.
Pan-Africanists will like this one. The intra-Africa trade appears to be going up, not as quickly as many would like, but it is picking up.
Yes, that's something we have noticed again in the last few years. An increase in trade within Africa, in particular within the ECOWAS region. I think that has been strengthening significantly over the last few years. The literature would suggest that this is something positive for Nigeria, and it's probably a faster way to grow and to develop. So it's a positive development that we are particularly pleased with.
Very quickly, do you think the outlook looks good into Q2? This is good, likely to go up?
Well, I think it does. Like you mentioned, if our trade and our balance of trade still remain positive despite the fuel subsidy and the strikes that followed the announcement, I think Q2 would actually be much better than Q1. Typically, our first quarter is our slowest period for trade historically. We expect that by the second quarter, this will continue to pick up, and as long as imports stay as have weakened, stay as weakened as they currently are, and our exports continue to grow, we expect our balance of trade to improve significantly as well.